The Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast with Dotun Adebayo and Tim Vickery.
Yeah, and today for the Global Soccer Interactive of our Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast, we've got Amos Murphy with us, football writer for the Express and the City Podcast. Great to have you back, Amos. The Intercontinental Cup. Be honest now. Be honest. Did you know it was happening? The final.
Not at all.
I suspect so. Well, I can tell you it was us lot, Europe, what won it. But anyway, go on, Tim. Obviously, you've been thinking about this. It's been a red letter day in your diary for years and years, hasn't it, this one?
Yeah, that's right. I really love your tiger jacket. Yes.
Is that the best you can do, mate? After
2
I've
minutes
thrown you a bone.
That's not bad.
Yes. Intercontinental Cup. But no, for serious though, you take it much more seriously over there. And no doubt you know that it was Flamengo and PSG in the final.
It was, yes. And there is an irony here because the competition is kind of dying on its feet. And the fact that you lot didn't even know it was happening. And I couldn't get anyone interested in this at all. Zero interest. You know, when I was telling people about it, it was, well, didn't we have that in the middle of the year? Well, that was the Club World Cup. You know, this is different. And this is still happening. It's a gathering of the champions from all of the continents. And the European side now goes straight into the final. The opponents, Flamengo, first they had to overcome the champions of North America, Cruz Azul of Mexico. And then they had to overcome Pyramids of Egypt to get a crack at what they really, really want. They really, really want it. A crack at Paris Saint-Germain. It's just massive over here. It's huge. And Flamengo have just had a busy few weeks. I mean, was it 2.5 weeks ago? They won our Champions League, the Libertadores. And then the Wednesday after that, they wrapped up the Brazilian League. And then it's off to this. And of the three, this is by far the biggest. They won this, or an earlier version of this, when it was just the champions of Europe and the champions of South America. The first time it went to Japan, it was a one-off game in Japan in 1981 when they beat Liverpool. Now, that's 44 years ago, and they are still singing about it. So, you know, this is a chance. If they'd have won yesterday, they'd be still singing about it in another 44 years. So it's absolutely huge, massive. It brings the city and much of the country, because Flamengo are a genuinely national institution, to a standstill. Absolutely huge. The good thing about this game is that of all the recent European champions, Paris Saint-Germain, I think, were more committed to it than anyone else. For a number of reasons. Number one, this has been played in Qatar. They're playing in front of their bosses. And number two, you know, Paris, it's a new team, isn't it? Effectively, it's a new team without a lot of tradition, without a lot of mega international titles. So they want to win all these things. And they took the Club World Cup quite seriously and in the middle of the year. They didn't treat it as a succession of friendlies. And I think they were very, very disappointed to lose to Chelsea in the end. So, and there was a pretty full stadium as well. And some of the other games are like 7,000. Dreadful. Because this competition, they've survived on the South American fans travelling. And it's a lot of money. You know, and Flamengo had only just won the Libertadores, which was in Lima. And to travel from Rio to Lima is much, much more expensive than to travel around Europe. So they spent loads of money there. And then, you know, it's right at the last moment they've got to sort out a journey to Qatar. So many of them didn't go for the first two games, and kind of the moneyed ones turned up for the final. Against Paris Saint-Germain. And it was a good game. It was a really absorbing game for 120 minutes. Felipe Luis, the former Chelsea left-back, more remembered, I think, by Atletico Madrid fans, because he spent a long time there. He's been a coach now for just over a year, and he's really impressive. Really, really good. I mean, I think another year and he's on his way to Europe. And that's what Flamengo is saying. Keep him for another year and he's then Europe ready. Really, really impressive. Looks a little bit like Simeone on the touchline as well, because he tends to wear all black. And the game brought out a kind of Diego Simeone side of him, because usually Flamengo are the big favourites in every game that they play. And, the crowd are baying for Flamengo to get on top of them, But this is Paris Saint-Germain, so it's much, much more about controlling Paris Saint-Germain. That's first. You control them, you try and restrict them, you try and contain them, and you strike on the brake when you can. So it was largely a holding operation. They went 1 down in the first half. You couldn't really see where a goal was going to come from. And your worry is once it becomes 2-0 and they've got to open up, then PSG have the speed and the effervescence to score 3 goals in 10 minutes. That didn't happen. It's a really experienced side, this Flamengo side. They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger as the money keeps rolling in. Jorginho, for example, is running the midfield, the former Chelsea and then the Arsenal player. They've got Alexandro, vast experience of Juventus. Danilo didn't get on. Danilo, who scored the winning goal in one of the games, the former City and Juventus and Real Madrid defender. They didn't use him. He didn't get a game, but it's quite an aging side, which means you have got lots and lots of experience. So they were able to manage the game. They got back on level terms second half with a penalty. I'm probably in a minority of 1 in Brazil, but I wouldn't have given it. I thought it was a very, very soft penalty. Here they're all yelling, "Obvious penalty! Send him off! Penalty!" Anyway, Jorginho, and Jorginho with the penalty.
He does the hop, skip, and the jump, doesn't he? Jorginho's penalties.
And so many of the goalkeepers try and defend the hop, not the shot. They've gone and he just slides it in and he's laughing at them. But in this case, it's the goalkeeper, the Russian goalkeeper, Safonov, who saw them off because he had the last laugh. Because it goes to penalties. And it's mainly Paris pressing. They couldn't get the goal. Dembélé, who wasn't fully fit, came on for the last few minutes, and he put everything over the bar. He had a few chances. He put everything over the bar, which in fact turned out to be preparation for him taking a penalty, because he put that into orbit as well. But once you get to penalties, I honestly think Flamengo are going to win. I really do. No, it's penalties. The PSG goalkeeper Safonov, who is he? He's letting a penalty for Jorginho. Who is he? The
That's what he is.
Flamengo goalkeeper Rossi didn't have a particularly good game, but he has pulled him through penalty shootouts in the past, and he likes the responsibility. So when it goes to penalties, I'm thinking this is Flamengo's to take. And something happened there that I've never ever seen before. I think I have seen teams miss 4 penalties, but I've never seen 4 in a row missed and 4 in a row saved. That I've never ever seen. And Paris missed a couple. Dembélé, as I said, put one into orbit. When they had 3 match points, Barcola didn't take a very good one, and Rossi got a save. But 4 in a row from Flamengo. And as they're stepping up, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, he's a safe bet. It's a little bit, like that Stuart Pearce moment in 1990. Amos, you're probably too young for this, but me and Dotun.
I know the one you mean, though.
When it's a semi-final against Germany, it goes to penalties, and when it's Stuart Pearce, you think, well, we're all right here. We're all right here. And obviously, he credits to the goalkeeper, but he has his saved. But as some of and Pedro, the centre forward, and he scored under pressure for Brazil against Croatia in the World Cup. He's a good penalty taker. He's not going to miss. Fucking crap his penalty. Leo Pereira, the left-footed centre-back. I don't really like him as a player, but he strikes a dead ball really, really well. He's not going to miss. Probably the worst penalty of the lot. It's just a back pass to the goalkeeper. Again and again and again. 4 in a row. Perhaps it was all too much. Perhaps, that thing of being too close to paradise. Perhaps it was all too much. But the end result is we've got yet another European victory. But with the money pouring into Brazilian football and these super clubs, Flamengo are ahead of the rest. There's a couple not far behind them, but it's got much, much better. It's much better. And I think there is the chance of of a game now. There is the chance of something interesting happening. So this is the irony, I think, of the thing. At the same time as this Intercontinental seems to be dying on its feet, there is at last, after 2.5 decades, there's the possibility of interesting games. And so I wonder what's going to happen with this. Because the existence, and now I think the consolidation of the Club World Cup, which was broadly seen as a success in the middle of the year, means it's going to happen again. And if it happens again, that's more money coming in. It's more depth in the squads, more possibilities. European coaches have done a lot, I think, in Brazilian football to improve the level as well. And the moment really starts in 2019 when Jorge Jesus, Portuguese with a big hair, bigger ego, turns up at Flamengo and just has a dream year. They had Liverpool in this game that time, and they took Liverpool to extra time, although Liverpool were better than I think Paris Saint-Germain were against them this time round. So the gap is closing, which means I think that you can envisage a scenario where there is more hunger for this type of game at the same time as this thing seems to be dying. So quite how this will work out, I don't know. I don't think FIFA make much money from it, not least because they obviously haven't sold the TV rights to the likes of you, have they? Because, you're not watching. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I think we're in an interesting moment.
Yeah, Amos, has he managed to convince you yet that you missed an opportunity in not booking Tim to talk about the Intercontinental Cup for your podcast? Has he managed to convince you?
I mean, I'd listen to Tim speaking about all sorts of levels of football. He's the best football salesman in the world. I was concerning myself with a very soggy Manchester City 2, Brentford 0 on possibly the wettest Mancunian night ever, which is going to say something. But yeah, I mean, going back to
for City, I did the game for City TV when it was 2 years ago. It was City against Fluminense, which probably even Amos has forgotten.
I was going to say, actually, it resonated when you spoke about PSG wanting to win it for the first time, because I feel like we had the same conversations from a City point of view. It's like when Real Madrid have done it X amount of times by now, it's probably just seen as a crossing the T's and dotting the I's. But there is that kind of prestigiousness to it when you go, and it was called the Club World Cup at that time as well, and you go and you tick off another, well, for this Intercontinental, let alone Continental trophy. I do wonder, like you say, with the growth of Brazilian football, if it will continue, and I do hope in the next year or so that we do get even a South American victor of this competition. It'll be interesting to see how it coexist with the Club World Cup, because that is obviously it's not even an elephant in a room, really, is it? It's Big Gianni's little pet project, and the future of that will be interesting. But I'm all for intercontinental fixtures. It's nice. I think it brings a nice flavour to it.
They've bent over backwards to Europe because traditionally, since this started, because it used to be just Europe and South America. And then FIFA took it over from 2005 with representatives from all of the continents. And it always used to be that the European team played a semi-final and to play the final. And the Europeans never, ever lost a semi-final. And ever since, from 2013 onwards, they've always won the final as well. And before that, 5, 6 and 12, there were 3 South American winners, all Brazilian, all 1-0, fighting from a trench. Desperate defence, the kind of thing we're going to see plenty of in the World Cup, I think.
Yeah.
That kind of game where the weaker side can hang on. But so they've bent over backwards to Europe because Europe doesn't have to bother with a semi-final anymore. So Europe goes to Qatar, which isn't that far, for one game. So that they've bent over backwards to make it as not as convenient as possible, to inconvenience the Europeans as little as possible.
Yeah, totally.
Bending over backwards. Yeah, keep bending over backwards because that's what it's going to take. No, for real though, Amos, the problem for the Intercontinental Cup, you alluded to it, which is that we've just come out of a Club World Cup, and I know that's not every year, but nevertheless, you come out of a Club World Cup in which you're asking a lot for us during a Premier League season to or at least during the gap in the Premier League season, to turn our attentions to this other tournament which we're not engaged in, and then following that comes an Intercontinental Cup. I mean, we just don't have the time. The Premier League is our priority, isn't it?
I mean, I guess that's what, within the four walls of these clubs, that's what they'll definitely be saying. And it did feel like for the teams that have won it in recent years, that was kind of what was being said. Although, with it being at this time of the year, this was before the recent changes to the Champions League, it has acted as a bit of a, halfway house for some teams. This is the old format, by the way, in terms of, you can get away a bit of warm weather training, you can break up the season a little bit. Again, it feels like we're in the new dawn with this Club World Cup, and I usually jump to conclusions a lot and have the opinions, but I'm gonna sit back and I'm gonna just watch how the Club World Cup situation plays out, because it could be the best thing, or it could turn out to be the best thing in 30, 40 years, or it could be an absolute disaster. So I think that will play a part, because obviously, like you say, Tim, this has been massive. I was in Argentina a couple of weeks ago, and you can see, for Boca Juniors, they have the 3 stars, and first of all, around on the murals and stuff like this, and your eyes perk up and you think, what's that about? And then obviously for them, beating Real Madrid in one of these finals is like the biggest thing in the world, AC Milan as well. So yeah, I hope it sticks around for that sake, because football isn't just for Europe, as we well know.
Yeah,
it's fascinating, isn't it? Meeting people who see the world through a totally different perspective from your own. I remember this the other way around. I was thinking about this yesterday. I was working with an Irish TV documentarist. This is 25 years ago, exactly 25 years. And he was like preparing the ground for a documentary. In the end, the whole thing left him so confused, he ended up never making a documentary. He'd done one on Diego Maradona. He'd done one on Escobar in Colombia. And Brazil just left him so confused, it never got made. But we went to see a veteran journalist, and a very famous journalist, who's sadly no longer with us. And this veteran journalist was explaining to him that obviously big clubs shouldn't be relegated. It's obvious. If a big club finishes bottom of the league, it just shouldn't be relegated. And I was I was watching the eyes of the Irish guy, just thinking, it's like someone arguing that day is night. But he's coming from a different perspective, which is very interesting, because the two arguments that he's bringing up, one is from feudalism and the other is from capitalism. Now, the feudalism thing is the status of these big clubs means that they're too big to go down. The fans don't deserve it, which is, I think, is a great argument. The fans don't deserve. Yeah. The fans have got nothing to do with it.
I'm sure River Plate would agree with that statement, if in fairness.
And the other answer is the capitalist one of we're throwing money away if we're getting big clubs outside the top flight. But it was fascinating, because the Irish fella had never come across anyone who thought this way before. And you see the same thing with this Club World Cup, because the two sides of the Atlantic, especially England and South America, they just see this from totally different perspectives, and they don't believe me. They honestly don't believe me when I say, the English just don't care about it. A mate of mine was the correspondent in a very good Brazilian journalist. He was correspondent in London for a while, and it was a time when Chelsea were there. It was Chelsea and Corinthians. The last time that South America won, 2012. And he went with they say they don't care, but it's all bullshit, really. They just say that to try and because they don't want to lose, They don't. He went to the club in the days before it, and the people working at the club didn't even know it was happening. At which point he had to kind of admit defeat. And then at that time, the games are early Sunday morning, and he just couldn't find a bar. He wants a bar. It's early Sunday morning that's showing a game full of Chelsea supporters. Couldn't find one. He had to go to a Brazilian bar, to watch it. And at that point, the penny drops. These people, they do see the world in a different way from ourselves.
Well, you don't blame us. The Occidental perspective is the one that dominates football in any case, and it's not. You call it feudal, but when I look at football, it's a very modernistic outlook of life and otherwise, which is winner takes all. Blame it on ABBA if you like, but it's not so much feudalistic systems in my mind. Oh, and by the way, nice to have. It's not Didier Drogba, is it? Didier Drogba, yeah. I should tell everybody you are listening to or watching perhaps the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast on a Thursday. We tend to do what we call a global soccer interactive, which means you can.
If you're not watching, you're missing a fabulous chance to see Dotun's jacket.
It is spectacular.
Not as spectacular as Tim's own button-down English gentleman in Brazil look. He's got a Panama hat in the background, but in terms of suited and booted, yeah, he's got a flipping flute on tonight.
I've come far too underdressed.
You didn't get the memo.
I know. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. Kids of today, eh?
So one of us had to look like an English gentleman. This is what was on the memo. One of us had to look like an English gentleman. I think we know who that is.
It's an Italian shirt and suit. I'm not having that.
Well, a European gentleman of English descent. And one of us had to look like a clown. I think we know who that is. And then
I don't think Amos is looking like a clown.
Well, I know, I'm not sticker.
I was going to say the third one could come looking like he wanted to look. So you decide who's who. But yeah, no, Global Soccer Interactive means you can join in the conversation as well. And do join in and feel free. You put all the buttons and everything around it. So to join in, and also to subscribe to Football Smash so you never miss anything from the Brazilian Shirt Name. And you can join us. We've got a WhatsApp group that you might want to join as well, and tell everybody, etc., etc. Back to the conversation, though. This one is straight for you, Amos. At this stage, as we speak, can City win the title? Premier League title, that is.
Yeah, absolutely. We're approaching the halfway point of the season. City are 2 points behind. I believe it is Arsenal in the Premier League table. Pep Guardiola is a serial winner at the moment. Mikel Arteta has failed every assignment he's had in terms of getting across the line in the big sort of trophy. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, it seems to have just kind of ticking along nicely, but my fear / issue / concern has been this is a very new team, and consistency comes with sort of great teams that have played together for quite a few years.
I have a question in this, because it is a rebooting of City, isn't it? It's a different City. Mm-hmm. How important do you think was the opportunity to try a few things in the Club World Cup? How important was that? Just try a few things, not under too much pressure. Get knocked out. Cool, we can go back to the beach, and then we join up again. How important do you think was that was in this new rebooted City?
So the whispers coming out of the club at the time were the fact that Guardiola, his new look coaching team, because he brought in Kolo Touré, obviously once of Manchester City's parish anyway, and rather remarkably Pep Lijnders, who was of Jurgen Klopp's right-hand man throughout their sort of most successful stint. And that was a bit of an eyebrow raiser, but the whispers coming out of the club at the time were the fact that City relished that opportunity just to get away, because last season was a bit of a drag. Obviously, you had a lot of players who were monumental in the last 5 or 6 years, winning trophies after trophy, but they just reached the end of their sort of life in terms of being at the top level, and then they go away to the States. They have, like you say, the sunny days on the beach, and they can have a bit of team bonding. In the end, it worked out that City got knocked out by Al Hilal, which was maybe a little bit of a surprise, but it wasn't. I think it was a win-win for City, because they either get to the Club World Cup final, make a lot of money, win the trophy perhaps, or they get a month off, 5 weeks off or whatever it is, and a kind of normal pre-season. And in the end, that's what happened. And City started the season looking like a team that didn't really have that 5 or 6 game pre-season that you would usually have. But I think Guardiola is always, I think he'd get rid of pre-seasons tomorrow if he could. He probably sees it merely a marketing tick box exercise in terms of show your face in X country. And, I think he deplores the concepts of pre-season, because for him, the season's long enough and your pre-season can be done in August. And that's kind of what it felt like City were a little bit slow out the blocks. But I think in terms of that team building exercise, to have that environment where it was stress-free, and like you say, still up against some, decent enough teams, some competitive matches. I think City will maybe, if they go on to achieve something, definitely say that helped.
Which of the teams competing with City near the top of the Premier League should City be more concerned about? Because, okay, you might want to dismiss Mikel Arteta in particular as a non-winner so far, although he is from your parish as well, let's not forget, and the student of Guardiola. So at some point, the apprentice has to take over from the dentist, but not on my teeth, not on my teeth. At what point do you start worrying about Chelsea on the one hand, and perhaps even Aston Villa?
Yeah, I mean, I say it firmly, tongue firmly sort of stuffed into the cheek in terms of the Arteta criticisms, because obviously, I mean, some of the results they've had this season have been fantastic, and they have been bubbling away nicely, and it feels like they are coming to a little bit of a crescendo, which would possibly be deserving of a major title. In terms of the other two, I mean, the Aston Villa story is phenomenal, and it's a real kick in the teeth for the football nerds, because what they're doing on the pitch makes no sense in the modern game. You bring up XG stats, they're massively overperforming in that department, but it's working, and it is kind of harking back to an era that is bygone at this point in the Premier League, where you can just score wonder goals and you can be 2-0 down, or you can be losing matches with 20 minutes to go and you just pull something out. The fear, I guess, for those guys would be, is it a purple patch? But, who am I to sit here and tell Villa fans that you can't dare to dream? Because football's a silly game. Leicester is the extreme example in 2016, and maybe City, maybe Arsenal slip up. Chelsea are a fascinating one, because they had the game against Arsenal 2 or 3 weeks ago now, where with 10 men they were much the better team, and probably had Moses Caicedo not sort of flung himself into that suicide tackle, they might have gone on and won it. From that point on, though, they've been, up until the win against Everton most recently, and Cardiff in the Cup, they had a bit of a sticky spell. I think they lost to Leeds away, and then they drew away to Bournemouth, which not necessarily gimmies by any standard, but they're a very, very young team in terms of average age, and you do wonder if they got into a position in the final sort of stretch, if they're within touching distance, would they have that sort of know-how within the dressing room to get it done? Because you're looking at somebody like Reece James as the senior man in that team, and Reece James is a phenomenal footballer, but he's 26, and that's he's kind of like the senior guy. So they'll be interesting to watch. I would definitely have them firmly in the Champions League picture. Whether or not they can sort of break that top two at the moment, I'm not too sure.
I'm not sure if Amos is going to like this one, Tim, because the best match of the season so far, in my view, was a certain Manchester United versus Bournemouth, which took place on Monday night, and which is part of the reason why we were still recovering from that. We forgot all about the Intercontinental. What do you call it? Yeah, well, Manchester United. I don't know how they've done it. But at moments on that pitch on Monday night, it looked like they were on fire. I'm talking proper, clinical passes and insightful runs and energy. I mean, Bournemouth are nothing to be sniffed at. We know that because they've got an incredible manager, amongst other things, in Iraola. But even Iraola, I think, would have to sort of say, look, that phase of the match, in the first half in particular, he didn't know what to do against them. They were just scintillating, as others might describe it as, which obviously they're not going to win anything, but it's great to see your rivals, isn't it, huffing and puffing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably subscribe to that myself in terms of game of the season. It was enthralling, and speaking of harking back to the yesteryear in the Premier League, Old Trafford, I'll whisper it, but Old Trafford under the lights in a game like that does, it does get the the senses tingling a little bit. And yeah, fair play to Bournemouth. They've I think they were chasing 3 Premier League victories in a row at Old Trafford. I don't know if any team's done that before, but it certainly felt like it would be quite the achievement. And yeah, I mean, it's funny because United, obviously last season, their defensive record wasn't even that bad. It was just the fact that they had an inability to score goals. They go out and buy 3 attackers in the summer transfer window, Cunha, Benjamin Sesko, and Brian Mbeumo. And then this season, I mean, the towards the top end of scorers in the Premier League, just looking now, I think only City have scored more goals than them after that 4-4 draw. But they've conceded 26, which, just looking down the table, 15th place Brentford have conceded fewer, 16th place Forest have conceded fewer. So that is kind of from one extreme to another. And they do bring in Lamens, the goalkeeper, who's had a decent enough start, but possibly could have done better for 1 or 2 goals. So it is kind of this seesaw for Ruben Amorim. You feel like you fix one problem, and then the leak starts in the loft.
And what we saw for your benefit, Tim. Sorry, apologies. What we saw for your benefit, as Amos has already alluded to, was Matias Cunha. I mean, if Brazil do not start with Matias Cunha, I'm an Irishman.
It's Dotun. Oh, Adebayo.
It's
Top
my
of the
friend.
morning to you. Top of the morning to you.
It's Dotun Patrick or Adebayo, if you don't mind.
Well, he's certainly in the mix. Certainly, I mean, the problem when he wants to play 4 up front, Ancelotti. Obviously, there's 2 wingers, and probably Vinny inside, and Cunha works well for that because there's a number 10 in there as well as a number 9. So he would seem to be competing with João Pedro of Chelsea for that position, whereas they've got other options if they want a kind of target man 9. One of the leading options, probably to the surprise of many, is Richarlison, because Ancelotti loves him. Maybe Igor Jesus of Forest, who's starting to find his feet, and I rate very, very highly. Amos, as someone who hasn't seen a great deal of this year's Premier League, not least because Tottenham are just mediocre, and just Tottenham can't be mediocre. Tottenham can be great. They can be terrible trying to be great, but mediocre, no. So I haven't seen a great deal of it. How would you try and sell me the 25-26 Premier League season?
Well, more than ever, apart from Wolves, who are still winless after 16 games, it is a case of anyone can beat anyone. It's funny in a way because English football over the last few years has, and this won't sell it to you, so we'll just switch off for a moment, but it has kind of been Americanized on the outside. But in terms of the actual competition, it's possibly the closest we will, or at least have ever been, in terms of that kind of not necessarily having that massive disparity between teams. I think that's kind of helped in the sense that Man City and Liverpool, their ceiling has come down a little bit, but the floor, my goodness, the floor has been elevated in terms of that middle class of in terms of the teams. And I'm actually looking now, Tottenham sat in 11th, Newcastle sat in 12th. It's the teams, in above them and just below them, like Sunderland, for example, an absolutely fascinating story. They've been fantastic this season. Bournemouth the other week, my lot, Fulham, that was a 5-4 game, just a completely bonkers game. So there's goals. There's not a lot of defending. It certainly has trended towards more of a transitional league. So forget that tiki-taka nonsense. And yeah, just
I loved all that.
Week to week entertainment.
Has this levelling up, which as clearly seems to have happened, when he's the newly promoted sides, they've had a look at what didn't work from the other newly promoted sides in previous seasons. We ain't going to play our way out through the line. We're not going to do that. We can't do that in the Premier League. We can't do what we did in the Championship. So what are we going to do? We're going to bulk up. We're going to hurl it in the mixer. Has this been the season of bulking up and hurling it in the mixer?
I mean, look at Manchester City's number 9. Erling Haaland. I mean, if you ask sort of, ChatGPT to make the anti-Pep play, you'd probably describe a 6'5" centre forward who maybe isn't technically the best in build-up and whatnot, but he's of course been such a rare in success. Football is cyclical. Elements of football is cyclical in that sense, and I do believe that we are in the sort of the most recent era of the physical player. It is a lot more direct. We're seeing wingers get a lot of the ball. Antoine Semenyo, for example, at Bournemouth, he's the next guy off the sort of the conveyor belt down on the south coast. It's looking like he could get a decent move in January because he's just, he's been able to shine. And yeah, totally, absolutely, in terms of that sort of physical element that's been brought in possibly over the last 18 months or so, but certainly this season.
I think one thing that is evident, it's not tangibly so, but for me, I see it when the teams line up against each other. I don't see the fear from the smaller teams, if you like, or the unfancied teams. I don't see the fear. There are times when you do see it. And in past seasons, Manchester City would come out of a tunnel and you could see the opposition shaking at the flipping size of Erling Haaland, apart from anything else. And even before that, the glorious Manchester City teams as well. I remember once seeing, I think it was the FA Cup final, Manchester United versus Millwall. And, they arrived at Wembley under the tunnel, famously, the coaches go under the tunnel sort of thing. And the players came out and Millwall looked good. They looked good. They looked up for it. The Manchester United players came off their coach, with their headphones on, sloping off the coach and everything. But they looked like thoroughbreds. And you could see the Millwall guys looking over their shoulder, particularly when they're lining up to come out as well, thinking, frigging hell. But I don't see that fear so much. Even when you talk about Wolverhampton, bottom club with only 2 points, certainly they're going to get relegated, I think. I know. I don't think they're going to get out of that. But I don't think they play with the fear. Remember, they may not be able to win a game, but they can take points off the others. So they almost took a couple of points off Arsenal the other day, didn't they?
Yeah, they lose 2-1.
Well, we're coming on to that.
There's got to be a point in that, isn't there? They should be given at least a bonus point for that.
Believe me, I've heard all the Arsenal excuses as to how they can legitimately call that a victory, and it's not working. I'm sorry. Obviously, there was a contender for own goal of the season, if not of the history of football, in that. And we shouldn't laugh because it is, it's horrible, horrible, horrible for the goalkeeper. But it is the contender. You're not going to see better than that. Have you seen any own goals this season that have tickled your fancy? Obviously not on that level, but anything else?
No, I don't think I've seen any own goals in particular like that in general. Again, shouldn't laugh. It was an incredible finish. I think if he'd, obviously Nick Voltemade, the guy we're referencing, I think if he'd have tried to score that in terms of him trying to do it as a striker in that net, then he'd have probably come nowhere near close. It happens. Having been a defender playing sort of locally and six-a-side, I've had home goals and one of my mini heroes growing up, not so many in terms of physicality, but Richard Dunn, I believe he holds the record for the most own goals scored in Premier League history, he was always partial.
Yeah, he couldn't help it. That was his position, and he was always facing goal. It seemed like in any case, his position. But I was thinking of the Wolverhampton Wanderers. They're both good. I don't like own goals. I don't know about you two, but
nothing for me will ever beat Gary Sprake. This is before your time, Amos. Gary Sprake, the old Leeds goalkeeper, playing away at Liverpool in front of the Kop and going to throw out the ball and then just deciding to hold on to it, but too late, and he throws it behind himself into his own goal. And the Kop, bless them, behind him, they break out into the recent Max Bygraves hit, Careless Hands. You will never, ever beat that for an own goal.
Yeah, I think Jamie Pollock scored one for City once where this, I think, in late 90s, and I'm pretty sure he sort of heads it over the goalkeeper. That rings a bell. It was always on those TV shows like top 50 silliest football moments or something like that. So we'll chalk that one down on the list.
See, now when you remind me of that, I think actually I do like some own goals. I like the ones that look like they will win goal of the season.
Yeah,
there are some own goals.
There's a dark comedy to it at times, which is just Yeah, Schadenfreude.
Yeah, exactly. Some of the woodwind goal of the season. I don't doubt that in any case. But like we say, the Premier League season is getting a bit exciting now. Of course, as you come to Christmas, you look ahead to transfer season, and that's coming next month. In a few days' time, the transfer window opens again. January transfer window opened. You've mentioned Antoine Semenyo. It would be a real shame for Bournemouth if they lost him, because he serves so many functions, as well as getting goals. Of course, he's a winger. He runs faster than most of the people on the pitch. He's a dribbler. He does so many other things. And he can defend as well, amongst other things. But are there any other players who either should go, should get a transfer, should leave and move on, or perhaps will get a transfer? For example, the obvious one that Mark Gay is still for Crystal Palace, going to Liverpool, as he was supposed to go last summer, if not this summer, or however many times you're supposed to go to Liverpool. January seems like the right time, particularly with Liverpool in the state that they're in now. Well, they put a bit of pressure because I know that Oliver Glasner doesn't want to lose him over the January transfer window, and has been quite sort of belligerent in saying that no, he's not going to lose him this time around. But hey, when Liverpool comes a knocking, you keep a knocking, but you got to let them in.
You can look at this from the point of view of the player, but you can also look at this from the point of the club. Who needs what, do you think? And do you think Liverpool definitely need to go and buy a centre-back? Who needs what urgently in the transfer window?
The need for Mark Gay at Liverpool has certainly shifted since the summer, where it felt like he was maybe not so much a luxury piece, but was definitely, obviously Konate and Van Dijk had such an imperious partnership last season. It felt like he was going in there with the view to the next couple of years of breaking that partnership up. For me now, I think, given the season that not only Konate but Van Dijk has had, they just need to shield one of them, if not both. And they got a bit unlucky. A young lad, Scaloni, something like that, his name, got an ACL. He came in from Serie A and he got an ACL injury very early on in the season, but probably wouldn't have been necessarily ready to step up anyway. But I think it was 35 million was the reported fee that Liverpool had agreed with Palace before Palace couldn't find a replacement in time, or something like that. You'd expect 6 months down the line, when his contract is closer to expiring, that would probably come down considerably. Although I think you could probably make a case that they could charge the same, just because of the desire and the need, and that could potentially bring other teams into play. I know City have been reported as potential admirers. In terms of other names, sticking at Liverpool, Mohamed Salah, have we seen the last of him in the Premier League? Because that
feels like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if you saw him take his farewell from the last match, the home match that they played, it looked like, it reminded me of Beckham, when, Beckham tearfully was applauding the fans of his last game when he fell out with Sir Alex Ferguson or whatever, and he was going off to Real Madrid. You could almost, you knew it was his last game. That feels like that. He had this wry smile on his face as he was applauding as well, which, I don't know, I read a lot into these smiles, and it was kind of like, yeah, mate, we've had some good times, and now the end has come, and I draw the final curtain. It felt like that, and I could almost hear Frank Sinatra singing that in my ears as he was going around. Yeah, generally. He's going to Saudi Arabia, isn't he?
I think it's probably a case of that, yeah. And I don't know, you could maybe say from a Liverpool point of view that AFCON coming around has, for those that would like Salah to stay, has maybe helped them a little bit, in the sense that he's able to go away, possibly clear his head, have a little bit of a think, because obviously, it's no secret that they've been in an absolute rut, the whole team, not just Salah. But I just think, when a player comes out and says something like that, it does indicate, I think, no matter who you are, if you try and put yourself above the club, you probably burn a couple of bridges that can't be repaired. Who knows? By the time AFCON's done, maybe Salah's gone and so's Arne Slot, and then you kind of just left with none of them, which is probably even still a possibility.
I actually think it's the other way around. That AFCON is an opportunity for Liverpool to phase Mohamed Salah out.
Yeah,
He's going to be gone for a month, and people are like, it's not who's he after a month, but nevertheless they've gotten used to playing without him. And also, I think that strengthens Arne Slot's position, no matter what. They're almost. It's a sort of a rebuild moment, and like you get this honeymoon for the rebuild, unless you're a Celtic manager, obviously. But you get the honeymoon for the rebuild, and that probably takes you towards the end of the season anyway.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that being the case as well. And I imagine, you go back to even when Jurgen Klopp was there, and famously in Klopp's last season, he and Salah had a bit of a bust up on the touchline, and you have to be a player of that quality and of that longevity. You have to carry yourself with arrogance, and you have to almost believe that you are bigger than whatever club you play for, because that's how you achieve such greatness. But at the same time, I do believe there was a lack of possibly self-awareness in terms of, right, okay, into his early 30s, physical powers might be waning a little bit. I believe there's a little bit of data into players who are in their final year of the contract do outperform because they are, either looking to put themselves in a shop window or get a last big contract with the team that they're playing for. So that has maybe played a part of it. And the situation at Liverpool, obviously going back to summer with the tragedy, and it kind of has been building up, and maybe this is what needs to happen for it to just have that little bit of a refresh. But I mean, what a servant. If it is the end, and some of the joy he's brought Liverpool fans, but also football fans in general, and I'm sure the Egyptian fans won't need any invitation to get behind him, and they'll be hoping to sort of end their mini AFCON drought as well, because that's kind of what they'll be looking to send him off with, because who knows when his next sort of international opportunity will come around.
It's a really important competition for him, as important, Tim, I would suggest, as the last World Cup in Qatar was for Lionel Messi to have that tag of being, the greatest ever. Because you often said that, unless you won the big tournaments, you're always judged by that. Is it Pele or is it Maradona? What have you won, Lionel Messi? You haven't won a World Cup, but he has now. And arguably, he did it in the style that was befitting of somebody of his stature. Mo Salah is still leagues ahead of all the other. It's like you were saying, seeing things from a different perspective. We look at Mo Salah chasing the ball the other day, and the centre half's got him in his pocket, and you're thinking, right, he's done. Whereas in Egypt, they see it from a certain different perspective, which is, hang on, he's still better than all the other players that we've got here. He can win the AFCON on his own, and I don't think he will, but that is the post, or that's the level with which he's going to be judged in the future. If he doesn't do it, he did well for Liverpool. That's great for Liverpool fans, Premier League legend, as Amos says. But on the world stage, it's kind of Mohamed who. Is that disparaging?
A little bit, because the Premier League is such a global league, and it's watched, as you know from your recent trip to Africa. It's watched all over. But I think you probably would have expected more from the Egyptian national team. And he had a tragedy in that he was injured for the World Cup. I wonder if leaving the Premier League leaves him fresher for doing other things for the Egyptian national team in the future. That's a possibility.
Yeah, mistake to go to the Saudi league when you've got so much more to offer. I know they're making moves to try and turn the Saudi league from being a rest home for faded footballers into being a home for young, up-and-coming footballers. And I'm sure they'll get there, but they're kind of gone the other way with Mo Salah, because he is the obvious poster boy for them still in North African football. But I'm not sure. It'll be a great move for them, for Saudi league, but I'm not sure it's a great move for a player he's got more to offer still for me than Cristiano Ronaldo had when he moved to Saudi Arabia. So
Mm-hmm.
Cristiano Ronaldo, we saw him at Juventus. He was done. He was a spent force at that point. So yeah, fair enough. Go to the Saudi leagues, and I'm not again knocking the Saudi leagues per se, but where they are today, and that's what every footballer has to sort of consider. Where they are today, are they really worthy of Mo Salah's talents? If they are the equivalent, if the Saudi league is the equivalent, let's say, for the best will in the world, the championship, would you expect Mo Salah at this stage to be playing in the championship? No, he's still, take him to Wolverhampton, they'll have him.
Yeah, I'm sure I love that.
Which other clubs, Amos, do you think? Because quite often the January market is for desperados, isn't it? Yeah. Which other clubs do you think are going to be desperate?
I wouldn't be surprised if Man United try and sort of do something just as a bit of an inspiration piece. Because speaking of roller coasters, their form book has been up, down, up, down, up, down. Like we've mentioned, Liverpool. I do think City will have a dabble. Reports today, the day of recording that, sources in and around the club are suggesting perhaps maybe Pep Guardiola's tenure at City will come to an end this season. I'm sure he would love to go out with a bang and get another Champions League, get another Premier League title, whatever it might be. Don't see Arsenal necessarily going there. Be interesting to see if Spurs do, because they're obviously trending not in the best direction in terms of Premier League, but they should almost certainly get into the Champions League, what is now called playoffs, essentially round of 32, but it's not 32 teams. It's nonsense actually, but they should still extend their Champions League campaign for a couple more weeks at least. And they were looking at maybe bringing in a winger in the summer, and that didn't necessarily get completed. I think it's going to be a weirdly active January window. A lot of the times PSR and whatnot has a say. I believe that's changing come the end of the season, so I don't know in terms of like the ramifications as to spending capabilities and whatnot. But off the top of my head, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if those teams were looking to do business. I mean, you can barely write Chelsea out ever. They've got a spending habit like no one else really when it comes to being tempted. Oh, Villa as well, because they're obviously within touching distance of something pretty decent. They didn't get a lot of business done in the summer, but if they're sort of sat there going, this could be another Champions League, this could be potentially even a Europa League. Obviously, Emery's the guy in that competition as well. Maybe they get the wallet out.
Yeah, what about clubs facing relegation?
So obviously Wolves are gone. I imagine they will be doing business, but in the sense that they're looking to plan for the Championship, and I think that'd be smart. I think we kind of saw that with the appointment of Rob Edwards in that sense. Burnley, I possibly, but they just don't seem to have the quality. West Ham are in a quagmire. West Ham are really, really struggling, and I think some teams higher up the table could do a lot worse than tempting Jared Bowen, and I don't know if he would necessarily leave because he has obviously got a good affinity to that football club, but it does feel like if they were to lose him, they've still got Lucas Paquetá there as well, but obviously a recent red card as well. It doesn't necessarily feel like his head's necessarily
City
in the
no
right
longer
place.
Interested, because when the scandal first blew up, he was on his way to City. Are they no longer interested?
Think that ship has sailed, which I think you would have seen his statement after that red card, and I believe the Portuguese statement was a lot more encompassing than perhaps the one that was released at the same time in English, and I think the English media picked up the one in English, whereas the Portuguese one had a little more detail in it. But I think the underlying sort of like, you read between the lines of that one, it feels like he's kind of not been able to shake the idea that he would have been playing for a Champions League club. This happens. He was found, obviously, not sort of to have done any wrong in that sense. And you can totally empathise with someone whose career was going in one direction. This happens, and then obviously that. I wouldn't mind personally seeing him get a move, because I don't necessarily know if Nuno Espirito Santo is the coach for him. He is a little bit more mercurial, and I don't know the situation in Brazil in terms of playing time. I know he's been in recent squads, but it feels like Ancelotti's doing the whole new manager roulette. How many players can I see? I imagine he's still, within a conversation, but if he's playing for a team that could get relegated, that's not going to do him any favours.
Yeah, the buzz around the Tottenham Stadium isn't about player signings, but manager signings, and the choice is, will it be Glasner or will it be Iraola? That's been what I've been hearing, and I'm not more than a stone's throw or two away from the Tottenham Stadium. That's what people are talking about. The fans, I haven't met a single fan who's prepared to give Thomas Frank the time to do what he's got to do. Apart from Arsenal fans, I've met a few Arsenal fans who said, "No, give him time." No. Well, they're not more than a stone or two throw away from each other. In any case, those two stadiums. But it will be tricky. But I'm not sure if Thomas Frank is going to last the season. Let's just, if you don't mind humouring me for a moment, who would be? Because I can see both of those managers, Iraola in particular, maybe being tempted. I only say in particular because it seems like Oliver Glasnost is the one that, before Ruben Amorim got a 4-4 draw, was the one that Manchester United had their eyes on to succeed Amorim. But could you see that happening during the season?
Stylistically, I would say Glasner's probably a better fit for Tottenham. I wouldn't necessarily rule out Marco Silva, who's had a bit of frustration with the Fulham board. I remember comments in the summer, which he was basically saying this needs to you need to spend more money, basically, or I'm not going to be here. And they are sort of, as they most often do, float around mid-table, and it feels like he's ready now. He's been at Fulham for a good number of years, I think since they got promoted again in 2018-19. So it's a bit of a surprise perhaps that he hasn't been tempted elsewhere. But Oliver Glasner, the issue that Tottenham perennially have is that they are trying to tempt managers who are obviously doing a good thing. They're on the right path. Will they stick around and wait for no sort of disrespect what some may consider a bigger club, one challenging for trophies on the regular, and for example, currently there may be an opening at Liverpool, and if for whatever reason Xabi Alonso turns it around at Real Madrid, they are probably going to look to recruit in the Premier League. So it is as always, it is a balancing game, and the best managers make the best decisions, not only on the pitch, but also in terms of knowing when to play the cards and when to sort of chuck in the chips.
I always love it the way the movement of one manager triggers off a kind of a musical cheers of other managers, who weren't planning on moving apparently. I was happy to stay here, but because that person moved to that way, and then I ended up being caught in it. Yeah, I can't wait for that one. Mate, let's call this one a score draw. Between us, you gave it really, good efficiency, and appreciate it, Amos, and threw in some jokes as well. Tim, shocking how you dressed for the occasion, but thanks for the one or two quips that you made that were worth saving. And of course, I'm just here being the piggy in the middle, as always. Yeah, I did get the memo. I thought it said "come as Elvis," not "come as an elf." Thank you all for joining in the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast. We'll do it again next Wednesday and Thursday from 4 p.m. Amos Murphy, once again, where can we get hold of you and your podcast?
Amos Murphy and the City Ramble for more nonsensical ramblings that we've just had there. But yeah, loved it, guys. Appreciate it a lot.
Merry Christmas!
Get in touch with the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast on Twitter at BrazilShirtPod, or you can email us BrazilianShirtNamePod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate and tell a friend. The Brazilian Shirt Name podcast is an 1129 production.